This is the Powered Up Podcast, show 67.
Because if you give them all those things, time, support, resources, you partner with them, and you bring a group of people together and you make change happen, I think it's pretty freaking invigorating. I think it's freaking awesome. It's inspiring. That's why I went into the job, but I want to do it with other people, right? I want to do it with other people. And when we can accomplish something together, it's powerful and it gives us hope.
Welcome to a real-world education with insight and advice from teachers in the game, where current and former educators reveal what truly sets apart the great teachers and what it takes to make a positive impact on students. Whether you're in pre-service learning, new to the game, or a seasoned veteran, this is the show for you. You'll leave feeling inspired to take action because we are powering education by empowering you.
Hey, what's going on, everyone? This is Ken Ehrman, host of the Powered Up Podcast, and I am here with my co-host, Mr. Matt, the Morning Meeting Rogers. Matt, we just got done one of our longer interviews and by far one of our best interviews with Jimmy Casas. I've been looking forward to this for months, and not only did this not disappoint, but it blew away my expectations of just the message that he brought, the energy, everything about it. So I want to keep this intro short and sweet because I want to get into this amazing interview. But what is something that you heard tonight that you are going to maybe implement tomorrow or by the week's end? Something you're going to change about the way you're approaching your students?
I think the main thing is just the reconnecting with our core values. He talks about what his core values are, and they are just systematic. They have a purpose behind every single one of them. And he uses those and kind of looks through those lenses where it's grounded, well thought of, and then applies it to the different scenarios. And I was thinking throughout the episode, I really struggled as a new teacher understanding what those core principles are, and that comes with time and practice. And he'll talk about how he didn't have it right away either. It took him 10, 12 years to really figure out what those values are. So there's no shame in that. But just trying your best every single day, looking to improve, figuring out ways that you can be self-aware and just make yourself better for kids, for admin, for really accountability for everyone. Well, what's your takeaway?
For me, he said multiple times that he's not a problem solver. He supports people, he coaches, he asks questions to help them, and I am a problem solver. I love solving problems. That's something that I've always loved about technology, and it's something I like being about being about a coach. And I need to stop. We break down something that I did with one of our teachers, and it's not that I did it wrong, but he completely opened my eyes into just a different way that I can approach the situation altogether and stop looking at everything like I need to be a problem solver. So like I said, this conversation was unbelievable. I didn't want it to end. You didn't want it to end, and we kept extending it. And Jimmy, being the genuine person that he is, he didn't cut us off at all. He gave us all the time in the world, which we are forever appreciative of. So we're gonna jump right into this interview. And like I said, if you've never seen Jimmy Casas speak, you're going to be blown away by not only his message, his intelligence, his experience, but just how genuine he is, and how he can really help you change the culture of your classroom, of your school, and of your school district. So without any further delay, let's jump right into that interview. Hi, Jimmy. Welcome to the Powered Up Podcast. How you doing tonight?
I'm doing wonderful, Ken. Good to connect. So thank you for reaching out. It's awesome.
Absolutely. We're really excited to have you here with us. So to kick things off, why don't you just officially introduce yourself? Let us know maybe where you're coming from now or where you're typically located, and just kind of a snapshot of your career in education.
Yeah, my name is Jimmy Casas. I'm currently coming to you from a hotel room in Bismarck, North Dakota. Was born and raised in Iowa, lived there all my life up until the last 5 years. I lived in Chicago, I lived in Dallas, and now I currently live in Pennsylvania. I started my career in Milwaukee Public Schools as a classroom teacher, teaching Spanish to Spanish speakers, teaching a little social studies, and it was a middle school teaching job. Took my first principalship at the age of 26, and then served in a school leadership position for 22 years as a principal, and then retired 6 years ago to start my own leadership company, and that's what I still do today.
Very, very interesting. So I first saw you at the Pennsylvania Technology Conference keynote, which you did an absolutely fantastic job. And I'm not just saying that because you're sitting here with me. It was definitely one of my favorite. I've been there for years. And a big thing of what you talked about, it's on your shirt right now. It's in one of your books, is about culture. And so I want to kind of start in the classroom. So, I always prided myself on putting my best effort towards having a really good classroom culture. I felt that I did. And when I reflect back on my first couple of years, I think I equated the kids liking me and thinking Mr. Ehrman is fun to having a good classroom culture, transitioning into year 6 or 7, realizing that it's not so much about me, it's about every other individual and their interactions amongst each other that is a bigger definer of what that classroom culture looks like. So, kind of thinking about that, all that, and just your expertise and experience, how can a classroom teacher evaluate their own classroom culture and whether or not it truly is positive, or all the kids are buying into it, or just what are those things that we should really pay attention to have confidence in the fact that we really do have a welcoming, opening, and positive classroom culture?
Yeah, there's probably several ways to do that, Ken. But if I were to start and give the response that is based off the book of Culturize, it would be the idea of culturize is really a play on words. The IZE is really EYES. And so what that means is how do we then see the culture of our organizations through the eyes of others? In other words, if I'm a building principal, how do I see the culture of the building through the eyes of others, which means the parents, the students, the staff? And if I'm a classroom teacher, how do I see the culture through the eyes of the students? And in order to do that, that means we have to be really intentional. And the only way we really know is we have to ask. So the idea would then to be is to be intentional in sitting down with students and asking them certain questions about the classroom climate and culture, right? In other words, for example, if I'm a classroom teacher and I really want to know what my classroom culture is like, well, the only people that really know that are the students. So I would then have to be intentional in sitting down and saying to students, hey, so there's always a process to this too as well. So I would begin, first of all, by indicating to the students, hey, I need your help. So, one of the things I'm wondering is, could you help me and help me defining the culture of our classroom? And here's why, because I want to be a part of a classroom culture where you look forward to coming to class every day. I want to be a part of a classroom culture where you feel valued. I want to be a part of a culture where you feel like you have a voice. I want to be a part of a culture where you feel like you have the confidence and that you feel capable and that you feel connected. So if I'm clear in my intent of what I need or what I'm seeking from the students, well, then I can put a process into place to make that happen. So obviously, sitting down formally with students and asking them. So part of that, I would ask them some questions. I would say, hey, I'm going to ask you these questions. I give it to them ahead of time so they have some time to process. I tell them what we're going to do with those responses afterwards. And ultimately, the idea is to improve the culture and climate of the classroom. I always say, Ken, we don't necessarily get to choose which students enter our classrooms. We don't get to choose which parents move into our communities and which school they choose to enroll their children in. But we do get to control and decide the culture and climate in which we want to serve our children. And so that's on us. And so, common questions that you could ask are things like, hey, so if I sat down with a student formally, I would ask a question like this. So, number one, talk to me a little bit about what do you love about this classroom? What gets you excited about coming to class every day? And then they would give me that response. And then I might ask another question. So let's just pretend we're talking to fifth graders. And so I would say to the fifth grade students, so, okay, so last year you were in fourth grade and now you're in fifth. So talk to me a little bit about how is fifth grade different than fourth grade? In other words, what are some things you did in fourth grade and what experiences that you had or did you have that you wish that you would have those same experiences here in fifth grade because they were just so awesome, right? In other words, you starting to understand, I'm starting to see it through their eyes. And then one of my favorite questions all the time, and you can frame it a couple different ways. One way would be saying, "Hey, what's a challenge right now that's keeping this culture of this classroom from being great? What is that challenge? And can you talk to me a little bit and share with me what that is?" I could ask the question that way. I could ask the question like, "Hey, if you became the teacher today, Ken, what's the first change you would make and why?" And so again, I'm trying to see it through their eyes. And then another question could be, "So Ken, what do you need from me so that you look forward to coming to class every day and that you're excited about learning? And then when you walk out, you can't wait to come back." And so those responses and getting those responses from students is an amazing way to get an understanding of your culture and climate of your classroom. Now, having said that, if students hesitate to tell you, or perhaps don't even want to respond, then that might tell you something about the relationship that you have with those children, or in other words, the lack of relationship, because perhaps they don't feel comfortable and they don't trust you because they don't know how you're going to respond, or they don't want to hurt your feelings, or whatever happens to be the case, or they give you pretty superficial answers or don't really tell you the truth. That's because we haven't invested enough in that relationship for the kids to trust us. So the idea of, I guess, either it's a verbal survey like that. I mean, obviously there's other ways. Since I said there's other ways, you could do more of a standard type survey where you'd give a survey to students, right? I'm not a big believer, Ken, in anonymous surveys, to be honest with you, because I think anonymous surveys, again, go contradictory to what we're trying to accomplish here, and that is to create a foundation, a culture of trust, right? And if we're giving surveys anonymously, then I feel like we're hypocritical because it's working against us. "Hey, I want you to trust me, but I'm going to give you a survey that you don't have to put your name on." And so this is what we constantly do in our schools. And I think it kind of works against what we're trying to accomplish, and that is to create that foundation of trust. Obviously, other ways would be to have other people observe. I think observation is awesome. So the more people that can observe you and come in and into your classroom and see it again, because they're seeing it through their lens and their eyes, and you won't see certain things. And so videotaping is another way. If videotape yourself, videotape students, have other people come in. I guess the more people that can observe you doing your craft, the better. But I still think the best way is always to ask and do it in a formal way.
I can absolutely understand why Ken raved about seeing your keynote because, I unfortunately was not able to join. I came up actually the evening after your keynote, and there was definitely a buzz. And kind of tapping into what you're saying, there's a buzz because a classroom culture determines really the success of your school year, and I think you're kind of tapping into whether or not it's going to be an easy day or a tough day. Well, you kind of predetermine that based off how much comfort and how well your kids feel with you, and how you feel with your kids and what you've created in your classroom through that culture.
Yeah, there's an intentionality behind it, right? And that's what people have to understand. I'm a systems guy, okay? So I'm a big believer is that you have to have certain processes and frameworks and structures in place, because in order to create a system, right, it has to replicate at each level. So in other words, if I'm going to ask teachers or try to encourage or invite or even hopefully inspire teachers to do that, then I, as a building leader, we would want to do it first. In other words, we want to create an experience for the teacher that they like that experience so much that they want to go back to the classroom and replicate it. And that's why I'm a big believer that everything starts with leadership, right? I'm not going to ask my staff to do something that I'm not even doing myself. That's pretty disingenuous. And so if you think of it systemically, I'm a believer there's three layers. There's central office, there's building level, and there's classroom. So superintendents should be doing the same thing. They should be sitting down with principals and asking them the same questions. I mean, just think about it just for a second. If I'm a superintendent, I say to a principal, "Hey, what is one thing you love about this district, right? What can I personally do to get you excited and feel supported that you look forward to coming to work every day, right? How is this school or district different than the last district you just came from, Jimmy? Talk to me a little bit about what you used to do in that district that you wish we did in this district because it was so awesome. Jimmy, if you became the superintendent today, what's a change you would make and why?" I mean, those are powerful conversation starters to have in order to really see the culture, because remember, we don't necessarily see it. That superintendent is not going to see what I see in the building level, and I'm not going to see what that teacher sees in the classroom level. And so we're supporting one another. But if we're all doing that at each level, that's a system. And as soon as there isn't one of the levels isn't doing it, in my opinion, the system is broken. It's fragmented. And unfortunately, often leads to dysfunction in many of our organizations. So that's why it's so powerful. But to me, culture is about behavior. It's about how people behave in the organization. And we really have to be intentional to constantly be assessing it. And the only way to do that, in my opinion, is to give others the greatest gift that we can give anybody, and that's the gift of time.
Hmm. So I'm going to kind of shift my follow up. I guess talking about that, you talked about that constant sense of getting feedback and really being open to that culture conversation and really asking what you appreciate about the district, what is kind of your motivation behind doing what you're doing and doing it to the best level. All of those features, you know, I guess the two questions that I would ask is in that situation where you do see a fracture, that fracture could probably be two things. Someone that doesn't realize that they should be prioritizing culture, which obviously comes to that, next level up saying, hey, this is a value of ours. And, how do we continue to do that? But, I'll just use an example as me as a younger teacher didn't view this as an issue. I didn't necessarily view it as an issue. So not prioritizing classroom culture may kind of catch me off guard, if you will. Um, or you also have, sensitivity. Education is such a sensitive person to person career that getting that feedback can be harsh. And if it hits at that wrong time, maybe we're not able to receive it productively. So how do you kind of manage that? Because those fractures, we want to acknowledge fracture, but we don't want it to turn to dysfunction. So what are your safeguards there?
Well, a couple things. I think what you're talking about here, I'm going to, I kind of already alluded to it earlier, is if you are sensitive to that, Matt, or you are, you fear or you are worried, that is because I have not done a good enough job of creating a level of trust with you. Okay. So I'm going to put that on me. All right. So it really, to me, there's two ways it starts. One, if I'm a brand new principal walking into a building, I'm going to take it from a leadership perspective first. I'm inheriting a staff, right? I didn't hire you. I'm inheriting you. All right. If I hired you, then coming in as part of that process, my goal would be to be very clear about what the expectations are as you enter the building and be very transparent on all the support you're going to get, what the expectations are going to be, how we expect you to behave in the organization, what our standards are, what our values are. We're going to talk about how I expect you to live up to those values, but I'm going to explain always why to everything, right? I'm a big believer that people want to be great at what they do, but they also need to be we need to be clear what we expect of people. I think people want to do a great job, but I need to know what you expect of me, Jimmy. That's my job to create that clarity. It's almost also my job to say, Matt, if you were the person I was bringing in, I'd say, Matt, from everything we understand about you, we are so excited. And I think you're going to love working here because we think you want to be great at what you do. And if we have this spot on, you're going to love working here because we're going to give you all the resources, the support, and the guidance, and we're the encouragement you need. We believe in you. But you have to understand, Matt, if you're going to take this job on, we have extremely high expectations. Okay. But the good news is we're always going to be coaching you up, always going to be coaching you up. So before you say yes to this position, you have to ask yourself, is that the type of school you want to work in? And am I the type of leader that you want to work for? That's what you need to take some time to process. So to me, that is an example of before we even bring people in the organization, we need to be having that conversation, right? Clarity of expectations. But if I inherit the school, in other words, I come in and you and Ken are already part of the staff, that's all right. I'm going to sit down. I'm going to be very transparent in the type of leader I am, but I'm also going to take a lot of time to build relationships, to be intentional, to be visible, to invest time in you, to get to understand you and your skills and your talents and your disposition. I'm going to invest, right? And once I begin to understand that, hopefully eventually there's conversation and dialogue, and then I can begin to weave in, not just by saying it, but hopefully living that standard. I'm going to live it. I'm just going to talk about it. I'm going to model it for you. because my goal is to inspire you to want to be great, right? Starts with me. And so one of the things I didn't share earlier, Matt, with in Culturize, there's really four premises. One, everybody's a leader in the organization. So how do we build that leadership capacity? Two, every organization has average, but we need processes and structures and frameworks in place to address the average. In other words, we can't let the average become the standard. That's not acceptable. So we better be very clear about that. Number three is that we believe the culture is here in our organizations, but it's not. There is a subculture beneath that culture, and that's what I call the undercurrents. Well, the truth is, superintendents create those undercurrents in the district, building principals create those undercurrents in the building, and teachers create those undercurrents in the classroom. We just don't know we're doing it. We don't intend to, we don't want to, but the reality of it is, these are very highly skilled positions, and none of us really have those skills walking into the classroom for the very first time, into the building for the very first time, or into a superintendent's role. And then the last premise of Culturize is we have to lead from a core set of values, which is the most important component of the book, which explains why it's important. But more importantly, what are those core values? How do we define those core values? And more importantly, how do we live them? And so all this is really around clarity of expectations, because I think people want to be great at what they do.
Jimmy, anytime I've heard you talk this conversation now, you are very upfront, you are very open, you are very honest, and you're very explicit. And your systems that you're talking about, your these ideas of sitting down, having that conversation, to me, it's all about being very upfront, being very explicit. And as a classroom teacher, I tried to do that as much as possible. I recently just did a presentation on using data and assessing your students and how it can, really upgrade your stations. And, I had a conversation with an administrator that I told my students exactly why they were taking these formative assessments and how it impacted the following day. I wanted them to
Mm-hmm.
understand because I didn't want them to guess. I wanted
Right.
them to say, I don't know. Like, I really don't know this, Mr. Herman. Like, I'm going to expect that you're going to help me tomorrow, or I do know this and I'm going to be challenged. And so, how, what are ways that teachers, administrators that maybe struggle with this idea of being vulnerable or being explicit, being very open. How can we take steps towards trying to do that because they see the value in it, but they haven't had the confidence to do it yet?
Yeah. So Ken, always use the example again, right? So to me, it always starts again. I'm going to go right back to what I said earlier. First of all, I'm going to invest time in you to build a relationship, because I'm trying to understand where your strengths, where your talents, where your fears, where your worries are, right? But I'm always a believer is, if I want something or want to understand something, I just ask, right? Because to me, I don't want to guess. I don't want to make assumptions, right? I don't want to do any of those things. Now, again, it's part of it's just the experience of doing it enough. So most of these things are skills, right? The problem is we don't do them enough and we don't practice them enough, and therefore we never develop the skill set. When I talk, when I present, when I coach, I mean, this is 35 years of experience that's coming at you, because I'm a learner, right? I want to keep learning. So I'm a really good observer. And I'm also a really good teacher. I know that about myself, right? I wasn't a good classroom teacher, right? I just wasn't, because I didn't know enough about what good teaching really was. And I only spent 4 years in the classroom. So let's be honest, right? But that is not an excuse not to continue learning and learning to become a better teacher. So most of this is then, how do we teach people this, right? Well, the first way we do that is we always start by, first of all, is by clarity of what we expect of people. Here's what I need from you. Here's why I need it from you. And notice I keep going back to the why, because I think that's critical. And we can talk about that here in a little bit. But for me, I always tell people what I need from them, what I expect of them. The second thing I do is I model it first, okay? Which means I'm going to partner with you, Ken. So if it's something I want to work with you on, I'm going to tell you what it is, but more importantly, why it is, okay? Then I'm going to say, here's the good news. I'm going to do it first, okay? Because I want to be able to model it for you, because I'm not going to ask you, Ken, to do something that I'm not willing to do myself. Once we do that, we will stay in that cycle, Ken, for however long we need to stay in that cycle. And I'm always gauging it with you. In other words, I'm asking you, getting feedback. we're talking about it. You might say, Jimmy, I don't know if I could do that. And I'd say, well, tell me more. What causes the hesitation? Have you always been that way? Did you have an experience that caused you to hesitate? That investment of time in building relationships to understand why people behave the way they behave. That is critical. It's this just the psychology of human behavior is all really it is, right? That's why I believe I'm an effective coach and a teacher, because I understand how this works. But then I got to model it. So after I model it, my job is during that time is to be building your confidence. But that's a skill to ask the right questions, to create the right level of comfort, to get people to believe in themselves. These are things that you just don't naturally maybe know. Some people might know it, but for the most part, these are learned, right? I've learned this over the years. Then the next step would be is I would then, after that conversation, if you felt you were ready to do whatever it is we're asking you to do, then I would come in and observe you. You know why? And I'd say, you know why I'm coming to observe you? Because I'm going to be right there with you, Ken. All right. If it goes south, don't worry about it. I'm right there. I got your back, buddy. It's no big deal. This is how we learn: trial and error, failure, all these things. So I'm just trying to create that level of comfort. And again, I will stay in the observation mode and the cycle of feedback and observation and feedback until you build the confidence that you believe you can do it. And it's at that point I'll release you. So this all goes back to my personal why now. It's been my why for 17 years. I know exactly why I do what I do. And that's because I, Jimmy Casas, want to inspire other people to be more and do more than they ever thought possible. And I do everything I can every day to live that why. Because if not, people will figure that out. And I give people a lot of credit that they're pretty good at figuring out who's genuine and who's not. And I think that's what makes me successful. I think people know that I believe in what I'm doing, and I do believe in it. And I'm not going to stop until I show these people that they can be great at whatever it is they want to be great at.
I agree completely, and I
Now
think
I'm
it
getting
is
all
very
fired up, man. Now you're getting me all jacked up. See, this
good.
is what you're doing
Good.
to me.
It's powered up. That's why we call it that. I do. It is very honest or very obvious that you are genuine about that, and you said about how people pick that up fast. I think the best people at picking it up are the kids. First through 12th grade, those kids will know immediately if you're honest, if you're genuine about caring about them, about caring about the culture of your classroom. You talked about undercurrents, which I vividly remember from your presentation, and that was something that really stuck with me. So, can you kind of further define and clarify what you mean by an undercurrent, and then also as a teacher, how can we look for red flags of undercurrents in our own classroom, and then on the reverse side of that, how can we make sure we're not caught in or maybe increasing the flow of an undercurrent in our staff in that community as well?
Absolutely. First of all, the undercurrents are anything in our organization that hurts our culture. Okay. In other words, if we want a high performing culture, what's keeping us from having that high performing culture? So here's the hard part. So when I work with school leaders, right, I often have to tell them, hey, listen, first of all, you have to understand we're the undercurrent. Okay. So part of it is these are my personal opinions based on my years of experience, based on the work that I do, and based on my own research and working with principals every day. But the bottom line is, whether you're a classroom teacher, whether you're a building principal, or whether you're a superintendent, or whatever your role is, we're always the undercurrent. So first of all, we just have to accept that. We don't want to be, we're not trying to be, but we are. Okay. So therefore, how am I the undercurrent then? Okay. So one of the things we have to begin to understand in leadership is that we want to avoid what I call perimeter leadership. That's not effective leadership. I know this because I spent 12 years in this world right here. Okay. This is not effective leadership. The most effective leaderships or leaders, excuse me, they use personal instead of perimeter leadership, they're personal leadership. In other words, they know it all starts here, so they personalize it. So in other words, here's how I see it: when Jimmy Casas doesn't get the results that Jimmy Casas wants, Jimmy Casas used to look out here and say, well, that's because Ken didn't do it the way I told him to. Matt, what were you thinking? Matt, oh my God, this is what I told you to do, and look what you did. Or whatever happens to be the case, right? A student fails an exam. What do? We blame the kid, right? These are perimeter leadership qualities that we've created because it's hard to look at it and reframe it and say, no, I'm the undercurrent. In other words, if a kid wasn't successful, if I'm willing to self-examine, then I can probably figure out somewhere along the line that why did this catch me off guard? Why was this surprising that the student failed? I should have already known that. But what I lack is the proper processes. Maybe I'm not very good at giving formative assessments. Maybe my instruction isn't where it needs to be. Maybe I assumed that the kid knew what he was supposed to do, right? Or whatever happens to be the case. It's a different way of thinking. We don't typically think that way. So the challenge for me always, Ken, is to break through all that. I have to break that down in a leader and almost start over because they have to learn to see it differently because they've been doing it a certain way for so many years. I'm coming in and you're like, what? Nah, come on. So again, it's hard to say I'm the problem. No, I'm not the problem, Jimmy. I can't teach a kid who doesn't want to learn, right? This is what we hear. I can't teach a kid who puts his head on the desk. Well, this is because they're in the perimeter world. It's easier for them to say it's the kid because who wants to say, no, I'm the problem? And so that's where we have to begin to understand. So, how do we begin to address that? Well, that's why I go back to those 4 core values. Those 4 core values of Culturize, I created for me to hold me accountable because at the end of the day, everything we're talking about is really about becoming better versions of ourselves. If I can accept the fact that I'm the undercurrent, then I'm going to begin to change me to get a better result. So poor result is usually because there was a poor process that was in place. So all I need to do is I need to start changing me, and what I learned over time is that I would get a better result. And so that's what I begin to coach people. Don't take it personally. This isn't judgmental. No one's being critical. You want to become better. I know you want to be great. Let me help you become great, but you're going to have to allow me to tell you where you're creating the undercurrent. And so those 4 core principles I created to hold myself accountable. So that's why when I talk about being a champion for students, what that really means is we're not going to quit on kids. And when kids are not performing at the level we want them to, or we are not getting the results we want, I'm not going to blame the student. I'm going to invest more of my time to understand that story. In other words, why is the kid putting his head on the desk? I don't know. But if I'm willing to invest time to understand the story, then I have a better chance of making an impact on that student. But if I say I can't teach kids who do that, then we're done. But that's a lot what happens in our schools. And by the way, principals do the same thing to teachers all the time. So we're hypocritical because we're asking teachers to work with kids, but we don't work with the staff in the same way we're asking the staff to work with the kid, and therefore we lose credibility. So we're really the undercurrent. And so when we ask people to do what we're not willing to do ourselves, we are causing that problem. I'm the undercurrent there. So, I mean, there's a bazillion examples of undercurrents because I study them. I see them very quickly. If I go into a building, just like in today, I was in buildings all day, I immediately see the undercurrents very quickly in the classroom, at the building level, because I just do it every day. And so once I can help them see it, it's amazing because they'll see it and they'll go, just didn't see that. And then when they change their behavior, they always get a better result. So one of the things we do to take pressure off of people saying, listen, you don't have to fix the problems, you don't have to solve the problems. Get that mentality out of your head. This isn't our job to fix and solve problems, in my opinion. Our job is to change us, and when we change us, we get a better result. And I think that's all we can ask of people.
It's almost like that idea of the first step is always admitting you have a problem. Like, I think that in that situation, when you are able to walk into a situation and say, how can I be the catalyst for improvement, looking interior? And, we talk about reflection all the time. Everyone in any career has to look at reflection, but specifically when we're making so many decisions and, I see a kid's facial expression, and that totally sends me in a direction of, is that a teachable moment that, what, they didn't get it because they're frowning or whatever the case may be. We're making adjustments on the fly and trying to try and support, but also follow the system. And as you mentioned, being systematic, like that is so important to just, have consistency, model what you're expecting, and allow, the kids, the teachers, the administrators to just kind of know what that pipeline's going to lead to. That consistency is really helpful.
Yeah, Matt, if you and I sat here and talked for an hour, you would start hearing the themes of when I talk, right? Because everything in my head is a framework. I see it, right? But it protects me. And so if you were to give me a problem right now, I would tell you how the undercurrent came about, right? So let me give you an easy example for both of you to hopefully bring clarity how this works. So Ken, you come to me and you say to me, hey, Jimmy, hey, I'm going to ask Matt to do something for us tonight. I'm going to ask him to set up the cameras, get it ready, get ready for this podcast tonight. And then when we start the podcast, Matt isn't ready. And Ken, you get frustrated with Matt. Like, Matt, how could you not be ready for this? The podcast is going to start in 2 minutes and you're still fumbling with the camera trying to get it figured out. But Ken, you asked Matt to do that. And when Matt doesn't do it, Ken, at the level you want him to do it at, in other words, the standard of excellence, you're now frustrated with Matt, so you're going to blame Matt. And I'm telling you, no, that's actually on you, Ken. And you're going to say, what? How could it be on me? I mean, I told him with clarity what I needed him to do, and he said he knew how to do it. So I trust him to do it. And so how could that be my fault? If he didn't know how to do it, he should have told me he didn't know how to do it. And I say, no, Ken, you're the undercurrent. Here's my point. If I'm going to ask somebody to do something for me, yeah, I'm going to say, hey, Matt, here's what I need you to do tonight, right? And then Matt says, okay. And you say, Matt, can you do that? And Matt says, yes. So there's where Ken and I differ. Ken says, well, he told me he knew how to do it. How would I know? So he shouldn't have told me that if he didn't know how to do it. And I said, yeah, because you don't have a process to ensure that Matt was successful. Your job, Ken, is to set Matt up for success. So watch. If it's me, I say, Matt, do you know how to do it? And he says, yes. I say, great. I'm going to do it first. I want you to watch me. I'm going to show you how this camera gets set up, how we get this prepared for a podcast. And Matt watches me. I say, Matt, did you see how I did that? Yeah. Now I want you to try it. And I'm going to watch Matt do it over and over and over until I'm satisfied that he can do it in the way I want him to do it, as fast as I want him to do it, at the quality I want him to do it at, whatever that looks like. And we're going to stay there in delegation mode. It's called the delegation misstep that happens all the time. And I will not release Matt until he's ready to do it. And I believe I'll get a better result every time. And we see this happen constantly. Or we see this, Ken. You know what, Jimmy? I was going to have Matt, but I'll be honest, it literally would take me 30 seconds to put it together. I'll just do it myself because I don't have time to wait for Matt. I'll just do it myself. That is a problem because it violates a value of mine, what I just said to you earlier, that everyone's a leader. Well, if everyone's a leader, why am I not building Matt's leadership capacity? Why? Because I think I can do it better, because I don't have time to teach him, because I have an ego and I want to be the guy who does it all. I don't know, but that violates something within me, and I'm not going to do that. So that's a real simple example, but I mean, I can give you example after example after example. If you want to give me one from your teaching, I can show you where you're the undercurrent. Just tell me anywhere you're not getting the results, and I'll show you how you're causing the problem. You just don't know it.
Yeah, I would actually love to do that. And I wish you would have given me that advice 66 shows ago. So now I can get Matt ready for the next podcast. So actually, I want to tell you not a story of something I did with a teacher about a week ago as a coach. And maybe you can tell me where I went wrong or, just
Yeah,
how,
it's
how
not
it
it.
relates to
And
this.
here's the
So,
thing, Ken. I appreciate that, but understand this. I tell people all the time, it's not that we do it wrong. We do it the best we know how,
right,
right? Part of this is, hey, we're just learning, right?
right,
And so this is just years of doing this, as much as why I'm good at it. But I mean, trust me, I tell people all the time, I screwed up for 12 years every day, right? I
right,
didn't want to, I didn't mean to, I just did the best I could. But I had a leadership coach come into my building, Ken. You know what I said? Jim, where the hell were you 12 years ago? I mean,
yeah,
but that's the problem, right? We hire a principal, we give him the keys and go be a principal.
right,
And now we're frustrated that we have another change in leadership because the staff is in an uproar, and we got bad evaluations, or we got bad culture, and then we want to blame the principal. No, we don't blame kids, we don't blame teachers, we don't blame principals. We blame us because we don't have processes in a place to grow and develop these people. We just
right,
assume that they know how to do it. They don't.
right.
Nobody wakes up and goes, hey, watch me just screw this school up. That's what I want to do. Nobody's doing that, right? So okay, so go ahead, Ken. So give me the thing you were going to discuss here. Let's hear
So
it.
I was working with an high school English teacher, and what started the whole thing was he wanted to become more efficient with giving kids feedback on large writing pieces. So I showed him a tool that allowed him to embed audio comments, which significantly reduced his grading time. So he did that, and then I met with him like a week later. He loved it on his end, but he said, I could almost guarantee you that 90% of my kids didn't listen to anything that I gave them. They don't value the feedback that I'm giving them on their writing pieces. They just want to see what's their bottom grade, and then they move on. And so we created a system where he spent an entire he spent an entire class to give the kids to listen to the feedback, and they had to jot down what did this teacher say I did well, what did I not do well, what questions do I have, and then he conferenced with every student to find out, what did they pull from it, and then the following writing piece now he has built into his rubric to have them use the prior writing piece's feedback as a part of, keep doing well what you do well, and are you improving on the things that I'm telling you need to improve on, or do you continue to do that? So his attitude towards the students valuing feedback greatly changed because of giving them time and explaining to them very explicitly, I gave you this feedback, I want you to value it.
So did he get a better result?
Yes, he definitely got a better result because, I think, I mean, I feel like we almost kind of saw the undercurrent together where he wasn't giving them the time they needed to listen to it, and just expecting high school kids to want to really listen to the feedback their teacher gave them on their own time, if that
Yeah.
makes sense.
So here's a couple things. So the good news is you got a better result, right? And so
Hmm.
that's what's good, right? So you're trying, it's like trial and you're trying some different things, right? There are many potential undercurrents in the way you just described it, if I understood it clearly. So let me just give you the first undercurrent that's a really obvious one. Most of what you guys are doing, or most of what he did, actually you did it to him also, is that number one is when he goes to do this with the kids to change this, right? He made that decision. So that's all compliance. He just made the change, right? Anytime we tell people that they have to do something, or we just change something, they have to do it because we said it, or we're going to try this. If you don't get feedback, if you don't understand with clarity why we're doing this, it's going to be compliance. And usually compliance is not good in culture. Okay. It doesn't mean you still didn't get a better result. The problem is it may not sustain as long as you want it to. A better approach would have been, first of all, if he feels he's not getting, if the kids, I think I heard you say the kids weren't looking at the feedback. Is that what I heard? They weren't looking at it, right? Okay. The question I would say is, if he said that to me, he said, Jimmy, hey, I'm just really frustrated because the kids aren't looking at the feedback. And I'd say, why not? And what would he say? He better say, well, I asked them all, and this is what they told me. But I bet that didn't happen. I bet he'd say something, well, because of this, or probably because of this, or I think because of this. That's the mistake we often make. We get a result and we try to make a quick change, but we don't ask why we're not getting that result that we want. So I would say this. So if it's me, I'd say to the kids, hey, listen, this is what culturizes in a nutshell. I go to the kids, I say, hey, listen, one of the things that you need to understand is when you submit work to me, I am always going to take time to grade it and give you feedback. I'm not just going to put a letter grade. I'm actually going to read it and I'm going to write comments on it, because here's why. It's really important for me, right? Hopefully, if I do a good enough job, you'll begin to see the value in the feedback that I'm giving if you want to become a better whatever, writer or whatever, right? Now, I also recognize that not everybody in this room is sitting here going, oh, I want to be a writer someday. But it's not necessarily just about writing. It's about a work ethic. It's about how do I get better? It's about resiliency. It's about determination. It's about perseverance. See, I don't just teach content. My job as a teacher is to teach you about life. You know what my father once told me? He said, Mijo, if you make hard work your passion, you'll be successful at everything and anything you want to do. Don't aspire to be a police officer, a doctor, a nurse, or a veterinarian. Just work hard, because you can become any of those if you work hard enough for it, right? So part of it is I want to be intentional explaining to the kids why it's important. Then when I go to say to them, how do you best take feedback? What's the kind of feedback that works best for you? And then I'm going to put a process into place where every kid has a voice, where we have a conversation, and that together as a class, we're going to work together in what's the best way that we can give feedback. It's okay for Mr. Casas to say, here's one way I'll give feedback, but what are some other ways you'd like me to give you feedback? See, all that takes time, and most of us don't want to do that. We just want to get right to it. Remember I said earlier, the greatest gift we can give anybody is the gift of time. I live the value. I just don't say it, right? My first core value was, remember, invest time in people always to understand the story. The story is, why are they not valuing the feedback? And rather than take time to understand that, I just changed my process without their input, without their feedback, and I'm right back to compliance. So again, I would never be so disingenuous, Ken, to say, and Matt, that this is a perfect system and I've got it all figured out and you'll never have any issues. No, I already told you, I don't fix problems, I don't solve problems. I'm always constantly trying to help people become better versions of themselves, because all these are good qualities to have as far as teaching goes. Getting student voice and getting them to invest in what we're doing is critical as a classroom teacher. It's just as critical as a principal. If I'm going to ask Matt to invest in something, he better understand why I'm doing it, and I better get some input from him to learn a little bit about him, because sometimes, guess what? I'm going to have to differentiate for Matt and I'm going to have to differentiate for Ken. You know why? Because I'm trying to model to Matt and Ken that when you go in the classroom, you're going to have to differentiate for kids sometimes. And I'm not going to ask you to differentiate for kids and then me blanket every teacher and say, well, this is how you're all going to do it. Nope. Mm-mm. I am a believer of this. I teach people to give people frameworks, which means my expectations. It's okay. I expect this, I expect this, and I expect this, and I expect this. But here's why, and here's the cool part. Everything inside is your autonomy. Show me your gifts. Show me your talents. Take risks. I got your back. You've got freedom here. But we need a structure, because if we don't have that, we're going to create all sorts of inequities. If Ken is a higher performing teacher than Matt is, well, whose kids do you want your class? Which kids do you want your class in? I want my kids in Ken's. But I got to create a framework that Matt and Ken can both utilize. Then I give them autonomy within, because that's my guaranteed and viable curriculum. I can guarantee every kid's going to get this, 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 and that. And here's your art of teaching. I don't care how you get here. That's why I hired you. But if you need help, I'll continue to teach and grow and develop you and give you the resource and the support for you to get better and better. So again, it can get kind of, to me, I'm a very visual person, but I like to work in frameworks because I think that helps people stay consistent in the work that they're doing every day. So if you're going to change something in the classroom, get kids' voice, give every kid a voice. It isn't like, hey, what do you guys think? There's another undercurrent, because we know when we do that, not every kid's going to talk. Right? And then we hear 5 or 6 kids talk, and then we say, okay, that sounds like a good idea. You guys think it's a good idea? And then nobody says anything. A couple kids, yeah, okay, let's do that. And there's 7 kids back there going, I didn't really want to do that, but I didn't feel comfortable saying what I really thought we should do. That's an undercurrent, because we didn't have a process in place to get everybody's voice.
Yeah, you you pointed it out right away, and just like you said, you point out those undercurrents. I see it immediately, the piece of not talking to the students. I wrote that down because I felt that we did do something to show value to the students, but we never asked them, how would you like feedback, or how do you value that? So Matt, I want to give you the opportunity to do the same thing. What's something that's bothering you or hindering you that you want to talk about here?
Yeah, real quick, Ken, the danger of that one is you still got a better result, but the danger is it may fool you and you may do it again, and next time you won't. And when you don't, you'll blame them because it worked before. That's the other undercurrent you won't see. So let me give you a basketball analogy. If you've ever coached, the kid runs down the floor, you've told him, hey, we've got 28 seconds, let's run some clock. And he runs down there, he catches the ball on the 3-point line, he's wide open, he can't help himself, he jacks it up. And you're going, no, 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 right? The clock is our friend. And the ball goes in, right? He's right. So what's the kid do the next time he goes down? He jacks it up again. And now he goes 0 for the next 9, because he shouldn't even have shot it the first time, but because it went in, he thinks now I can do this. Well, that's kind of an analogy I use, is just because it went in doesn't mean it was the right shot to take. It wasn't. We got lucky, but now we form a bad habit and we stay in that bad habit, and it costs us later. So anytime a colleague comes to you and asks you for help, the first thing you should say is, well, why do you think the kids don't value the feedback? And when they say he doesn't know, you say, well, that's where I would start. I'd start asking the kids, and you'll learn a lot from that. You wanted to fix it for him, Ken. That's what I would say. So if Matt came to you, Ken, guess what Matt's going to keep coming to you? He's going to keep coming to you. And you're going to feel really good about it. It's going to stroke your ego a little bit. You're going to feel pretty damn good about that. But you're not developing that. He's not growing because he doesn't understand the why behind it. I'm a coach. I'm not a consultant. I don't tell people what to do unless they're going to get themselves in harm's way. And then I'm going to say, Matt, don't do that. But here's why. But that's a rarity. Usually it's coaching, and coaching is questioning.
So let me just kind of, go from the realm of, so I'm a fourth grade teacher. I teach all subject areas, and
Yay. Congratulations, Matt.
yeah, it's a wonderful thing.
God bless you, my friend.
And in that situation, we have two brand new curriculums for math and ELA. And the big shift in those curriculums is, it is very systematic. There are online components for when, to kind of provide the extension for kids, the obvious direct instruction through traditional workbooks, and honestly, a lot of lecturing and displaying. It's very teacher focused in both the math and ELA. So I would say almost the conversation in the faculty room or in curriculum days is, the scope and sequence has, a lesson a day, is that pacing guide, which just does not seem doable. But in order to kind of find that middle ground, we find ourselves rushing through, which just backs away from, what we feel like we want our classroom to run like. So I feel like you almost have this rubber band scenario of, I know how I want my classroom to run and feel, and to the opportunities, the creativity, those type aspects. On the other side, we have this new curriculum that, every 3 minutes in increments is essentially designated of how we should spend our time. So what is that undercurrent? How do we change that perspective? And where do we find, harmony in feeling like we're doing the right by kids?
Yeah. Hey, Matt, this math and ELA curriculum that you're using, who asked you your opinion on the math and ELA curriculum?
We actually were invited in to do some evaluations with companies, and they were pitched to us. So we were
Sure.
involved in that conversation.
Yeah. But did you say, yes, we love this and we want to do this?
I think it was our last curriculum is far from what we need it to be. So anything is, we think, maybe better related to student prep.
Right. So here's what I would say. This is what happens in schools every day. So whoever the powers to be above you, they created the undercurrent, first of all. Okay. Because they violated every process in how to make change happen. Now, I'm not being critical of them. I'll give them all the grace in the world, because you want to know why? Because there's no class in principal school and there's no class in superintendent school that teaches you how to implement effective change. Doesn't exist. They don't know how to do it. They don't know how to do it effectively. It's always, for the most part, top down. And that's why our organizations continue to be average, because their processes are ineffective. Now, again, it doesn't mean you and other teachers aren't working extremely hard, but you're conflicted. You already gave me the answer. You said, Jimmy, I'm forced to have to do a lesson a day. That would be called compliance. The pacing guides are way too quick. That would be called compliance. And now I find myself rushing through. That's called checking the box. Right. And I don't blame you, Matt. You doing what you have to do. Right. But if in an ideal world, where is the coming back and saying, Matt, what is working well and what isn't? So are they giving you an opportunity to provide feedback and give them meaningful feedback? And more importantly, what are they doing with it? We all know that when we're asked feedback and we don't do anything with it, eventually we quit giving it, or we don't invest any time to give it. We see this all the time, right? So there's many undercurrents happening here, because anytime, first of all, if we're going to put something into place, then that means we needed a better process than to get 7 teachers or 6 teachers to go watch some people, because you know what? There's probably 60 or 70 teachers in your building and they had no voice in that, other than you coming back and saying, well, yeah, it's better than what we have. And so these are the systems that we're creating in our educational process that's broken. Again, I'm not mean, I don't being mean to them, and I don't judge them for it. I think people do the best they can. These people are doing the thing. They say, hey, it's better than what we had, so they convince themselves. It's still ineffective, though. You know it and I know it. But this is what we're going to keep doing. And then we wonder why we're in the state that we're in there. So How do you fix this? I'm not sure you can, Matt. It's not yours to fix. But if I was going to do anything, here's what I would do. I would be honestly, I would go back to my supervisors to be and say, hey, do you have a minute? I want to chat with you and just give you some feedback. Whatever you do with it is fine with me. It'll just make me feel better that I get off my chest. But I want to be really honest with you. I'm really struggling at keeping the pacing up on this lesson a day. And here's why. Here are the things where I've made adjustments to make it better. And it has improved a little bit, but we're still not getting the results we want. And here's why. I would love the opportunity to sit down with you and others and see if there are other ways we can continue to work together to identify what's the issue, what's causing it, and how do we work together to get a better result. But I'm not sure you can fix this one, buddy.
I agree with you. I think that there's a difficulty, and I'm lucky not to make this about our situation. I'm lucky. I feel like we have the chance to give honest feedback. But the reason I can give honest feedback is because I've been teaching for 13 years. A 3-year just tenured teacher, in some ways, yeah, you have some flexibility to share your voice, but you may not have the confidence, or you may not have the relationship with your supervisor to feel like you can have those honest conversations. So what are you doing? You're waiting 6, 7, 8 years to establish that zone that you feel like you can actually voice your opinion, only to the detriment of kids.
Right, but you just said it yourself again? Did you see it? So why is a teacher who's a first or second year teacher, why should they have to wait 6 or 7 years to be able to give their voice? I mean, this is exactly what we're dealing with every day in schools. That's what I'm saying is the problem. My opinion is that first year teacher, her voice or his voice is just as important as your voice, right? And I would tell them that. But then I might say this, but Ken, here's the thing. Matt's been teaching for 7 years, but Ken, you got talents too. I want you to express your voice. Believe it or not, I bet there's some things that Matt could learn from you. You know why? Because we're all learning every day. You have experiences that Matt has never had. You have done things that Matt has never seen. Share those stories. And maybe by sharing that, there'll be something in there that Matt can go, never thought about that. Thank you. Or Matt will say, yep, I've done something similar like that, but I like that little twist that you added, right? That's kind of cool. I think I'll just make a little adjustment or tweaker here or there. But when a staff member doesn't feel they have a voice, and we see this all the time because they're new, that means the process of onboarding that staff member is ineffective, therefore creating all sorts of undercurrents.
It makes too much sense. It when you say it, it's so obvious, but you're pointing out how hard it is for us to see it. So I do want to be respectful of your time, but I have a fun question that I like to ask some of our guests that are in a position like yours, that have been either an administrator for a long time, or you're now in the private sector as well. Tell us about Mr. Casas, the teacher. Your kid, you said you did it for 4 years. If we talk to one of your students from one of those 4 years, what would they say about your classroom, or a fun story from when you were in the classroom? What was it like to be in Mr. Casas' high school classroom?
Well, it depends which student you would talk to, and it was a middle school. It was a middle school classroom. Um, I will say this: I went to the inner city because I wanted to work with kids that look like me. I went to the inner city because I wanted to work with kids who struggled like me. I wanted to be a great teacher. I wanted to make a difference. I wanted to make an impact. I did the very best I could. But when you first start, obviously in my case, I mean, I had high marks from my cooperating teacher, and yet I walked into a situation I was not prepared for. The good news is I had really good mentors, right? So I made mistakes early on. I didn't invest time in those relationships. I wanted to teach and I wanted to discipline like my father disciplined me. I thought I could snap my fingers and tell them, knock it off, and think that would work with kids, right? And it doesn't. Um, I had a good heart. I was compassionate and empathetic, but I also got frustrated because I couldn't understand why kids just behave that way, right? I came from a family who you don't talk back, you don't smack your mouth, you don't disrespect, or you're going to get that belt right upside your, pretty quickly. And so when you walk in with those experiences, right, we all go in. This is a great example about relationships. Is I define relationships based on my personal experiences, right? And this is what happens when we go into school, because most people think they build relationships. But if we've never had a conversation about what relationships really are and how we define those and what we expect, we're going to create an undercurrent there, because we all bring different experiences to that. Some kids would say that I was mean. Some kids would tell you that I really cared about them. Some kids would tell you that I was funny. Some kids would tell you I was scary, because I was a middle school teacher, by the way. But I know what Justin Jackson would say. Justin Jackson would say I was like a second father to him. Justin Jackson is 42 years old today, and him and I are still really close. And I had him as an 11-year-old. When Justin Jackson was released from prison after 20 years of in and out of the system, the first person he called was me. So it's an array of stories, right? I have other kids that would tell you I hated that man because I know he quit on me, and I'm telling you, I quit on him, right? And so those are the lessons you take. Those are the things you take away, and that's why I do what I did today. Those lessons is who I am today, which is why I do what I do today, because I'm still trying to make up for it since I was, way back here 30 some years ago, because I know I didn't do it right, but I did do the best I could. And I've learned a lot, and I've tried to rectify that, and I continue to do that every day, right, in the work that we do with kids. And I try to help other educators avoid the mistakes that I made as an educator. And so that's why I do what I do today. So I guess it would depend on what kid you talk to.
That was not the answers I was expecting, and it was 1,000 times better. You're just open, honest. The way you're so genuine, it's palpable. It's, you feel it, you see it, and it's, I've seen it every time that I've interacted with you, and it's very refreshing as an educator to see that. And I can only imagine how much your staff appreciated working with you and feeling that every day. So I do want to transition into our exit ticket, which is the same 4 questions we ask every guest every week. Question number one, and we've circled around this all night, but maybe you could boil it down to a shorter answer here or a simpler answer. What is the best thing a teacher can do to make a student's school experience better?
I would say reflect on their own school experience, reflect on what they said that they wanted to be for students when they sat in that interview chair. I would say be compassionate, be empathetic, but always maintain high expectations for all kids and never stop believing in them, which means you never quit.
Yeah, that's the right thing, man. I mean, that's absolutely true. I'm sure you've had, as you mentioned, fantastic mentors along the way, but even from students, what would you say is the best piece of advice you've received along the way? And like I said, it could be a colleague, supervisor, or even a student.
Well, when you invest a lot in kids and you feel the pain because you feel like you haven't made a difference, right? And it starts just eating at you. So I tell people, what I tell people is the one thing that I never would have been able to predict and never anticipated was the emotional toll that being an educator would take on me, right? And and so the reason I say that is because I go back probably to a comment that my good friend Dan Donder said, who was my first supervisor, and I talk about this in one of my books. He said to me, Jimmy, listen, everybody's going to have a savior, but it ain't always going to be you. Then he paused and he said, but it doesn't give you a reason not to try, son. And I've never forgotten about that. I can't own it all. I can't fix everything. I can't walk home every night feeling guilty when a kid, quits school or walks out or, assaults a kid or brings a weapon to school. And we've worked with these kids for weeks and months. And that's what fries people, right? It's like the kids you work with, and then one day you walk in and they're just gone. Like, what happened? I've been staying after school, giving up my lunches, worrying about this kid every weekend. I worked with him for 6 months, and I walk in one day and just gone. And then the next kid comes in and you do it all over again, and it's gone. And then the next kid comes in 3 months later and it's gone. And then the next kid comes in, you say, it ain't going to matter. He's going to be gone too. So I'm not even going to put the time in anymore. And that's one thing I learned, that you just don't ever quit, because that kid could be Justin Jackson. And once you've experienced it, you want to experience it again. You want to feel that again.
Hmm. So I cannot wait to hear this. Our next question kind of talks about how the school year goes in waves. There are times that are we're flying high, things are going great, right? There are weeks that we struggle, whether that's conferences, report cards, or just a tough week where you're trying over and over in kids. So, what is something that you make sure to say to educators to help them power up through those moments of struggle?
Yes, the ebb and flow of the school year, right? Right. And in Live Your Excellence, I actually wrote a poem about this because I know it, right? I've experienced it, and I see people every day dealing with it, right? There's a reason why in August we're all excited. We're staying at the door. Hey, how's it going, buddy? We're all jacked up, right? And high-fiving kids. Great to see you. And we're all excited. And, walking through the hallways, we got all this energy, and people like, how you doing? I'm doing great. And then by the end of September, like, how you doing? Like, "Oh, I'm doing okay. Yeah." And then November comes, how you doing? Like, by December, like, oh my God, is it almost Christmas break, right? And then January comes, right? And you're all curled up like in a fetal position because you're like, I don't want to go back to work.
Absolutely.
I don't want to go back, right? And then January, literally, no matter where you live in this country, we're all looking up at the sky going, dear God, can you just give me a freaking snow day? Right? You just need a break, right? And you're like, oh my God, because you got about 7 weeks of darkness, right? You're going to work in the dark, you're coming home, and by February, we're literally all sitting around in a meeting or in a committee meeting or in a classroom or lounge, and we're all bitching, going, God, I hate kids. I'm just so exhausted, right? And then March, you can have spring break and the sun's starting to come. You're like, how you doing? Like, oh, I'm doing okay. In April, like, I'm doing good, man. And by May, you're going, yeah, I'm doing awesome. You know why? Because those little freaking kids are going home, right? So it's just like constant, right? And that's what
Absolutely.
we deal with. And that's what's so hard about our job. So what can we tell educators coming off 2 years of the most unpredictable, most brutal is the only word I can think of, is number one is, all I believe in now is most of what happens up here. So I would say the same thing, the two of you, is just do your very best to reframe it. We work at a profession that every day we are surrounded by an abundance of blessings. I, Jimmy Casas, am responsible for my own morale. I am not going to wait for people to come fill my cup. So I'm going to be intentional, and I'm going to reframe it, and I'm going to say, no, I'm going to go make my own joy, and I'm going to go find it. And if that means I'm going to sit down with a kid because that gives me joy, then that's what I'm going to do. If I'm going to go work with a colleague and help them because that brings me joy, that's what I'm going to do. If I'm going to go do something with my wife, whatever it is that brings you joy, it's there. The blessings are there every day. You got to look for them. You got to be intentional about them, because we got to find the joy, or if not, then this job is going to kill you. And I'm not going to put that on anybody else. I own my morale. I get to determine and choose what kind of day this is going to be. And I'm going to do my very best every day to bring my very best self to school every day. And if that's 70%, then I'm going to give you my 70%. That might be the best I got, but I'm giving it to you all. But more importantly, if you've got a family at home, you've got to find the joy, and you've got to reframe it, because you got to take the best version of you home every night too, because your family deserves that. You can't be giving it all to everybody else and then go home and have nothing left in the tank for your own family. And that's what I did. That's how you end up divorced, and that's how you end up alone. And for what? Because that's what I thought I was supposed to do. Yeah, I'm not doing that anymore. I'm going to take care of me first. Then I'm going to take care of my immediate family. And then I'm going to take care of the students. And again, it doesn't mean there aren't exceptions that I might do this, but that should be every day, to the point that I'm giving it for everybody else. So that's what I'd say.
Yeah,
It's
we've
the
had
best I
some.
got for everybody.
We've absolutely, we've had so many people just hit on that piece about sharpening the sword, taking care of yourself, because teachers are probably one of the worst at that. Because we're in the human business, we're helping grow and lead humans, and it is an emotional job, and rightfully so. But like you said, that family piece is so important.
But
So
we
the
got to be
last
careful,
question,
right? Because we
please.
can't wear it as a badge of honor. We can't have it both ways.
Yeah.
We can't complain about it every day and then keep doing it, right? It's not a badge of honor. I'm not a superhero, right? I'm not a magician. I can't fix all the problems. I can't solve all the problems. I didn't even create these problems. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to reflect on it. I'm going to change my behavior to see if I can get a better result. And if I can do that, then I should be able to go home every night feeling pretty good about my efforts that day.
Yeah, absolutely. So, last question. It's easy to fall into facilitating a repetitive classroom. What do you think separates teachers who are the ones constantly seeking change, innovation, and implementing new teaching strategies into their classroom?
Repeat, say the first part again for me, Ken.
So, it's very easy to facilitate just kind of a repetitive classroom. We do the same thing every
Yep.
day, every year.
Over and over and over and over, right?
Yep.
Yep.
So how
And then
what
and then the
separates the
second part.
teachers who are the
Okay. What?
ones who that are seeking change and innovation and trying new things?
Yeah. Again, the first thing I'd ask is why are they this way or why are they that way? Right? What are these experiences they've had that have landed them where they're at? If we have a teacher who's kind of stuck and isn't innovating or isn't trying to get better, there's a reason for that. I'm going to invest time to understand that. If there's an expectation, right? Because I think change is good, where most people will say things like, well, teachers hate change and change is scary. I'm like, that's nonsense to me, right? And the reason is because I don't agree with it. I think actually people like change. You know what they hate? They hate change when they don't have support. They hate change when they don't have the resources. They hate change when there's no one there to guide them and partner with them. They hate change when they don't have the time to change. They hate change when we keep putting one more thing on their plate, but we never take anything off. So is it really change they hate? No, I don't think so. I think they hate all these other external variables that aren't happening. Because if you give them all those things, time, support, resources, you partner with them, and you bring a group of people together and you make change happen, I think it's pretty freaking invigorating. I think it's freaking awesome. It's inspiring. That's why I went into the job, but I want to do it with other people, right? I want to do it with other people. And when we can accomplish something together, it's powerful and it gives us hope. And to me, that's what change is all about. It's giving people hope that things can be better. Because let's be honest, if you guys don't think your schools can be better, your curriculum can be better, your culture can be better, if you don't believe that can happen, then let's be honest. What the hell are you two doing here tonight? And why am I here with you? No, you're never going to convince me of that. I've seen it, I've been a part of it, and I work in it today that we can inspire. Remember the why? We can inspire people to be more and do more than they ever thought possible. That's called hope, my friends. And we have to maintain that, or I'm freaking out.
Mm-hmm. Can I have one more question before we wrap up?
You can have 100 questions, Matt. I'm in a hotel room in North Dakota, buddy.
Hey, I was there this past summer. It is beautiful, but
Yeah, it is, but I'm in a hotel room that's cold.
with that being said, one of the questions that I was thinking about is your approach to teachers of different, statuses of their career. It almost seems like your approach is almost when you talk about system, it's upfront. It you kind of know what's going to happen, and it's passing on hope and these type things. Is there a different strategy you use because of it being working with a relatively new teacher, a fairly seasoned teacher, or someone towards the end of the career? Or do you feel like, if you are inspiring, invigorating, bringing out the best, that it doesn't really matter, that you can just kind of bring the same message to each person with some understanding of their environment or what's going on in their life or career?
Yeah, so here's my framework in my head, okay? I'm going to invest in my new people while at the same time I'm going to reinvest in my veteran people. I'm going to learn where my people are, and then it's my job to meet them where they are, but be very clear in my expectations where we need them to go, right? So a lot of this is just human psychology. It's understanding people, how to motivate people, right? That's really what this is about. How do we motivate people, right? To teach them almost how to become prideful, to become self-motivated, to find a reason and a purpose for why we do what we do. So here's the deal. People are all over the place on that. That's why the hiring process is so important. But if you don't know how to hire effectively, you're going to miss and you're going to hire people who are at a different level than where we need them to be. Now I'm going to spend all my time trying to change people's behavior, trying to change people's, make them more flexible, trying to make them less rigid, trying to make people more compassionate. Why are you so mean to kids? Well, the reality of it is I'm not here to do that. I'm here to find talent. Because if I can find the right people and put them together with other people that are just as talented, then we cut through all that nonsense. So the problem is, it goes back to what I said before. If I inherit it, it's a little bit different challenge than if I'm hiring it. Okay. But if I'm hiring it in 3 years, if I hired 4 teachers this year, 6 teachers next year, and 1 teacher the year before, fine. That's still 10 more teachers of 70 teachers that now begin to influence. Remember, I said invest in them, but reinvest in them. So I'm going to be strategic. So what do? I start creating frameworks and structures in my building to help make sure that that happens, so that the veteran teacher isn't jealous of the new teacher. I create opportunities for them to work together and partner together and to learn from one another. But I have to be really intentional. That I have to be really strategic. So when you think about the hiring process, Matt, again, that's another class that we never take in principal school. People don't know how to hire, and they miss all the time. And every time we miss, it kills our culture. It kills a lot of things, right? So that's why I do what I do, because I teach frameworks how to hire for excellence and how to improve your culture. Because if we don't teach people how to do that, they don't know how to do it. And so there's a framework how to do that to ensure better results. Again, you'll get a miss, but it'll be pretty rare. But we got way too many misses going on, because you know why? Because we don't know how to hire. And not only do we not know how to hire, you know what's even worse? We have no plan to how to onboard these people. Okay, Matt, how many years have you been in the school you've been into and you've been in at?
This building, 8 years.
Do you remember the first year you got hired there? Can you see the first year?
I can very
Remember
vividly.
that first year at your new building, at your building you're in now? Can you see it?
Yep.
Okay. You don't have to answer this, but just reflect on this. I would bet almost a paycheck for 1 month, okay, that you would want, that I bet that in that first month, this never happened. That the principal never came and met with you on a regular basis throughout that year. I bet that principal never sat down with you in a formal way and asked you formal questions and asked you questions. What do you love about working here, Matt? Hey, Matt, let me ask you a question. It's October. Are you still as jacked up today as you were back in August when I hired you? If not, why not? What's keeping you from that? What's happening? Jimmy, I just feel overwhelmed. Oh my God, I wasn't ready for this. It's just exhausting. Hey, thank you. Tell me a little bit more. What's exhausting you? See, if no one invested that time in you, if no one was intentional, how did they grow and develop you? Because you had skill sets walking in. Was there someone who was intentional in helping you develop that? And I don't mean like a workshop. I mean sitting down with you saying, Matt, what is it you want to get better at? Tell me what do you, because you know what? We'll make that happen for you. If you want to do that, we'll surround you by all these resources. We'll have people prepared and ready to teach you. We will send you, but guess what? I'm going with you, buddy. We're going to take a team of people with you because I want to be a part of that. I want to watch this growth and development, right? By the way, Matt, I know when we hired you, you said you want to be a leader. Let's make that happen now. You don't have to be an 8-year veteran to be a leader, Matt. You got talents. You're a leader now. And here's the good news in this building, no one's going to hate on you for being the young guy who's a leader. You know why? Because we have a culture that wants you to be great. And you know why I'm doing all this, Matt? Because I want you to remember that next year when we hire somebody, I need you to remember this, because I'm going to need your help to make Ken be great. And that's what I'm talking about. These are things, these are specific frameworks and structures that we put in place to help schools be great, to help teachers be great. Because remember, I already told you, core principle number 4, Culturize, already tells you, be a merchant of hope. You know what that means? That means everybody wants to be a part of something great. I live the core values. Core value number 3, carry the banner. What does that mean? Create experiences that when you walk away, people will carry the banner for you. You know what I've been doing all night tonight? Trying to live my 3rd core value. I want you to walk away here and saying, I want to work for that guy. Core value number 2, expect excellence. I'm not going to ask you to do anything I'm not willing to do myself. Core value number 1, be a champion. I'm not quitting on you. I'm going to invest more time to understand that story. I will stay in that framework with everything I do in my professional life and my personal life. I just came from a retreat this weekend in Chicago with my entire team. We hung out in Chicago and we learned from one another. And we walked out of there jacked up. And I'm carrying their banner and they're carrying my banner, because we can't be a company about excellence and then not model that. Right? So That's how I see everything. It just flows through me, but I've done it for 35 plus years. And this is just, and again, but I wasn't like this. That's what you need to understand. I became this way because I didn't like the person that I was pretending to be. And I said, I'm not doing this anymore. And either I'm going to do it differently or I'm out.
It
And
almost
I'm
seems,
so glad I did it differently.
yeah, it almost seems like, and as you're saying this, and then we can wrap up and respect your time, but it almost feels like, budgeting. As a new teacher, I felt like I was in the red all the time and working my way out of, poverty and getting to that level of, sometimes we'd make purchases that we would go down, right? There were times that we dipped below back into the red, and then we'd hover in that black, and then we'd start having, a security deposit saved or whatever the case may be. But you have those big purchases or something pops off that it just, as you're saying that, and even that the exit ticket question of that ebb and flow, dipping back in. I love the idea of what you're saying as that onboarding attribute. How do you gather everyone, and to almost go back to our earlier conversation, there are things that I can do, not even as an administrator, but as a classroom teacher, to allow for that classroom culture to be set up, and even the cohort of teachers that I work with to be set up to support each other, that what, we're not necessarily looking to the admin, it's just a bonus that we're already doing good, because we're doing good by ourselves, good by the kids, and good by our friends. Our coworkers are our family, and so
Well,
to do
I
that.
love the analogy you gave. I have never heard it put that way. I like it. I may even have to steal it. I'll have to reform it a little bit.
Totally.
I'll give you credit for it. But that was awesome, right? So that's a takeaway for me, the way you just framed that up. That was awesome. I love that analogy. So well done on that one. And again, when it comes to leadership, I always say this: teacher issue or leadership issue. Almost always a leadership issue. Kid issue or teacher issue. Almost always a teacher issue. It's never the kid in my eyes anymore. Okay. Never, ever. Right. So part of it is in the leadership. What I would call, the way I look at it, is the transparency of leadership. So that would mean this: Matt, Ken, if you work for me, I'm just going to be really honest with you. I want to be great for you. Okay. And I'm going to give you permission to help me be great, because I know I can't be great without you. So here's what I'm going to say. I know how I can be sometimes. If you see me going down that path, where I want to get you to someday is that where you're comfortable and say, hey, Jimmy, remember when you told me you gave me permission to help you be great? That isn't so great. And you know what I'm going to say? Thank you. Because that's the type of culture we need to create, is because we can't be great, because I need to see the culture, in other words, the undercurrents of that culture through your eyes, because I won't see it, buddy. I won't see it. The pacing's too quick. There'll be days I get frustrated. There'll be days I'm tired. There'll be days I'm just not at my best. And when that happens, we tend to not be excellent anymore. Live your excellence is not just, oh, I just say it. I expect people to call me out on it if I'm not, but it's pretty rare anymore that I don't live it, because I know that everybody's watching me, and it's just become a way of life for me. I love that standard, and I want to be that standard in everything I do. Are there days I don't reach it? All the time. But now when I don't, I see it right away and I correct it. I do something about it to get a better result. That's what I do. Always. That's just how I see it now. So again, I'm old enough. I've done this long enough to know I want to be who I say I am. It's a work in progress. It's 17 years in working intentionally, 17 intentional years. But I'll be honest, that 13th year coming back as a principal, remember, I lost my way at the end of the 12th year. I think Ken knows this because I talked about it. And it took me 10 years to gradually work my way back. But it's not like I walked in my 13th year and go, okay, I'm ready to live my excellence. I got my core values. I got this all figured out. I see all the undercurrents. It doesn't work that way. I still kept, in fact, I'll be honest, I didn't even like it. It was too hard. I was like, I don't want to, this is too much work, man. But every time I did something that got me a better result, I liked it. And I thought, damn, I think I can keep doing this. And then I just kept practicing it and practicing it. And the more I did it, it just became a way of life for me. And that's what I try to do now. I try to live that excellence. I don't want to talk about it. If I don't live it, I'm going to be a hypocrite. And I don't want to be a hypocrite. I already lived that world for a long time. I'm done with that world.
Absolutely. So I guess, as we unfortunately come towards the end of this episode, I mean, it is an honor to get to talk with you. And to be honest, like, we're recording this at 10:20 and I don't foresee myself going to sleep very, very soon. And not because I have other work to do, just
You could
ready to
have
get into the
nightmares,
classroom.
Matt. You could have nightmares. You go, oh my God, this guy, I don't know. It's just too much. And I know that. I know that about me, right? I say to people, listen, I know I can be overwhelming. Okay. That's why I tell people, just because I say it doesn't make it right. I don't expect you to walk out here, well, Jimmy Casas did this. Look, I'm not at that arrogant, people. These are just my experiences. If you ask me, I will tell you what I think. I'm not saying I'm right, but I'm not going to give you some bullshit answer either, right? I speak truth. I just say it the way it is. And there are people that don't like me for that. And I'm okay with that because I'm going to live me now. I'm not going to pretend. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I'm just going to say the way it is. But here's the good part. I do not judge. I'm not critical of people. Remember, I know people want to be great. I've already told you that. So that's the good news about me. You can screw it up all you want. I'm never going to judge you for it. I'm going to say, hey, how's that working for you? Okay, so what do we want to do about it? Let's do something about it. And I'm right there with you, buddy. I'm not leaving you alone. I'm not asking you to do it by yourself. I'll partner with you. But don't BS me. If you say you're going to do it, then do it. Okay? If you're in, I'm in right with you. But I'll call you a con in about 2 seconds if I know you're not in.
Yeah.
Because I know it. You can't con a guy who grew up all his life being a con. I'll see right through it.
Yeah. It's almost that bubble suit that you have to protect your workers. So, I guess really to continue the conversation, I know you mentioned Culturize and a few of your other books, and you have the opportunity to speak. But how can our audience continue the conversation with you after this podcast?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, they probably quit listening about 45 minutes ago. But if they did stick to the end or fast forward it, the best way to get a hold of me is jimmycasas.com. Everything's there. All the social media, the emails, the phone numbers are there. The resources are there. So that's probably the easiest way. Just go to jimmycasas.com. But I will say this. I mean, I think I have a pretty good reputation out there that if people reach out to me, I always get back to people. It's important to me.
That's wonderful.
Well, I can assure that is 100% true. Because you have
Well,
from the
kind of,
beginning
Ken.
when
I
I
mean, we
reached
just
out.
blew you off the first time. Hey, Ken, no, no, my God, I got him confused.
Yeah, so
It was too much. Guy got overload. That's what I get for getting in the way.
Yeah, to speak to how genuine you are. So I saw Jimmy at the Pennsylvania Ed Tech conference where you also apparently recorded a podcast with
I
someone.
did.
And so when I was communicating with Jimmy's assistant, she said, oh, he already recorded with you at the conference. We're not going to be able to record on April 5th. And I just responded and said, like, okay, I
It
understand,
was
but
so awesome the way you
they're
responded too, right? See, that's the difference. You lived your excellence in your
Yep.
response, by the way. See that?
Yeah.
See the benefit? You see how it got you a
That's
better
very
result?
true. I
Right.
accepted it, but I also put in a plug that, there might be confusion because I've never recorded a podcast with Jimmy. And then Jimmy jumped on the email thread, and before I could even respond, within an hour, he was calling my cell phone to apologize, to get everything cleared up, which, to be perfectly honest, Jimmy, I know you see yourself as, as just another human, as an educator, but from the perspective of truly being just a coach in a public school district, to have someone that I saw on stage 3 weeks ago speaking to, I don't know, 5,000 people, to call me to apologize, that again just speaks to how genuine of a person you are. And everything you've said tonight, I've seen you present a couple times now, this conversation, that phone conversation, I can truly say, as someone who I really value relationships, and I will often say to someone, I enjoy working for that person, or I think they do a good job, and then I use the word respect. I respect that person. That is a whole nother level for me personally. And there is no bullshit coming from you. I mean, I have a whole lot of respect for you for what you're doing, and I look forward to following you more, to hopefully seeing you speak more. I really appreciate everything you're doing for education, and education is better for it because of you. So
Well,
thank you.
thank you. That means a ton to me, Ken. And I did feel terrible, and my parents taught me the right way. When you screw up, you need to make it right, but you don't. You make it right the right way, right? You own up to it. I will say this, whether it's good news or bad news, but I mean, the fact that you took the time with me tonight, I'm now invested in you. And my promise and commitment to the both of you is if you ever need anything, you know exactly where to find me. And I promise I'll be there for you. You don't need to worry about that. I got your back.
That's
Well,
Okay.
we very
Don't
much
ever
appreciate
hesitate.
it.
If you call me though and say I'm sorry for bothering you, I'm going to hang up on you though. Do not bother me.
All right,
Okay.
all right.
All right.
I'll have to
You
try to
got the
remember that
cell
because that's
number,
hard to
buddy.
do
You
sometimes.
got the cell number. You got the cell number down.
Yep. Oh, I
Okay.
saved that voicemail. That
Yeah.
one's not getting deleted.
Hey,
So
thank you guys, and thank you for what you do, and keep doing what you're doing. And when you're ready to put it out, let me know so I can help promote it. And if I can help in other ways, in any way, just let me know. Whether it's for your school, for your kids, if I can do anything to support you, if you need some money for your class, whatever, just tell me what you need, buddy. I'm there for you. Okay.
all right. We
All
very
right.
much appreciate that. We'll link up to all your social media handles and your
All
website
right.
in our show notes page, which can be found at powereduup.com/show67. So Jimmy, thank you again. And Mr. Rogers, why don't you shut us down here?
Oh, I like that, Mr. Rogers.
That's right. So, without any delay, you are definitely powering us up as we powered down this episode. Everyone, stay well, care for others. The sun is staying out a little bit longer day by day, which gets us out of that seasonal depression as we get into April and May. So, take care of yourself, and we'll talk to you next week.